Okay, it's almost 3:30. A warm welcome also from my side, and thanks for joining my session. It's always a privilege to speak in front of someone who's very attached to the open source community, and it's also a pleasure for me being in South Korea for the first time. Thanks for being and welcome us so nicely, and we're really having a good time. And I hope within the next 30 minutes I can give a little bit back in terms of the journey we went through, what we're doing, and how the open source enabled us and helped us to build actually an entire company based and around open source tools. So my name is Franz Karlsberger. I'm the CEO of this company called Amazee.io, which got acquired by Marentis 2 years ago. And before I'm starting and jumping into the topic of today about golden path and open source, what is Amazee.io? So Amazee.io is a web application delivery platform. We do website hosting, we do web application hosting, but in a way that this is fully automated for the web developer. So that the web developer really only needs to build the code, and then it gets automatically deployed via an open source tool, which is called Lagoon, and into any underlying infrastructure. And then depending on your setup, it's either managed by yourself, or it's managed by a platform team, or it can be managed by Amazee.io. So what am I doing now in the next 30 minutes? So I'm talking about open source, I'm talking about a golden path, I'm talking about platform engineering, and I will talk a lot about developer experience, developer efficiency. So now you wonder why I'm here at Open Infra, where everything is about infrastructure. Why is this guy continuously talking about developers and developer experience, especially from an application developer perspective? And the reason is because the app developers are the stakeholders. They are the stakeholders for the operations team. We, the operations team or the platform team, however you call it, these are our end buyers. These are our customers. We need to be their champions. We need to make them successful, and then they will make us successful. And therefore, this is what I will do. I will talk about open source and how we all glue this together within a golden path. And yeah, let's get started. Before actually So I guess everybody from you agrees that every business today, no matter in which industry you are, is an IT business. So there's almost no industry where IT hasn't been any impact. And honestly, it's driven. Today's industry are driven by technology and innovation. And there are 5 pillars based on what we've seen in reports, what we've seen in real life, and it's based on those. It's really about scalability. So what we've seen in the last 15 years, since the rise of cloud technologies, since the rise of microservices, since the rise of Kubernetes, scaling applications becomes much easier, and it's really depending on demand. So it's very easy to scale up, to scale down, whatever the customer is needing. And with Kubernetes, actually, it's getting even more easier because now you can scale up components. It's not that you need to scale up an entire environment. It's really about the individual components itself. And this gives you the scalability, which is very important for today's business. The second point is really about resilience. So today, it's very easy to deploy applications across multiple clusters and across multiple nodes. Kubernetes have self-healing included. There are rolling updates, and it's constantly available. And that basically gives this resilience and gives you the performance your end customers are actually seeking for. Then when you're talking about agility, what do you mean? So I'm quite old. I've been in the industry, in the IT industry, since 20 years. I still saw when we did monolithic applications. We did, or we are only allowed to roll out every 6 months or every 12 months. I was working in the banking industry. We did 1 release per year in that stone age. In the meanwhile, we have microservices. Most of the time, microservices, architectures, we do updates every day. We do updates every minute almost. And there are the large retailers, as you know them, they do actually deployments every second. So this really gives you a totally different possibility to go to market and to work with your customers. Cost efficiency, that's a topic which we will see on the benefit side, but also on the negative side. And you will find reports out there which say, okay, the cloud is cheaper, and you will find report that the cloud is more expensive. I think I don't take any sides because I think it depends on the use case. It depends on the customer situation. If you're a small organization, maybe starting in the cloud is the best way to do it because you can easily scale up, you can scale down your environments, and you don't need to have your own on-prem or a data center where you need to have constant resources available. So I think there is this cost-efficient topic, but it's definitely a controversial one. The last one, which is really also a key and an enabler of innovation, is the interoperability. So APIs. APIs first. You connect your services. They communicate to each other. You don't need to have everything done in-house. We can actually easily apply and connect to those APIs. So as I said, where there's a positive side, there's definitely also a flip side. And I guess most of you are familiar with that picture. That's the CNCF landscape of projects. And I think that snapshot was taken a week ago. In the meanwhile, I'm pretty sure that this changed again. So what do I want to tell with that picture? Basically, yes, the technology evolved rapidly over the last years, but with this rapid innovation, also it increased the complexity. So there's clearly more complexity in managing and maintaining those environments or technologies, and especially when there's a lack of talent, or I guess not a lack of talent, let's say a lack of expertise. And as I said, every business in the meanwhile becomes an IT business. Yes, you have Google, you have Meta, you have Microsoft, you have AWS. Those people don't have a problem to really get the talented people because, okay, they have to pay, they can pay the salaries they want to pay. But for everyone else, that's a problem because, okay, you also need to get talented people to get your environments right. What else, of course, increased dramatically over the last years is the security. So with new tooling, you have higher chance of vulnerabilities, you have more entry vectors, and you need to be prepared for it. And costs, of course, can be on the flip side of that as well. And then I spoke about the talent already. There is clearly a war on talent in the IT industry, and we all need to be prepared, especially that we need to have those specialized skills. And let's take here today is a good opportunity. OpenStack. If you would have asked me 5 years ago, what is the future of OpenStack? Everybody would have said, okay, that's gone. These days are over. But then suddenly something in the industry changes, like Broadcom is acquiring VMware, and now you see this this traction going back to OpenStack. And we have heard the numbers today. They're expecting a combined annual growth rate of up to 35% within the next 5 years. So this is also where you need to make your bet on which technologies are you trained in and how you can apply this. So why am I telling this, and what does this all have to do with the golden path and open source? But here are just a list of top challenges I've found, which every one of us is actually dealing in 2024. And I don't need to go over that list. There are very obvious topics on there. AI is on there, platform engineering is on there, technical debt. So I spoke about microservices, but okay, we still have so many monolithic applications out there as well. Okay, do we re-architecture them, or do we keep them as they are? What is the better way going forward? But the most concerning number for me is actually, and for me, I speak as a business owner myself and having developers, is developers, as of today, are spending less than 50% of the time actual coding. This is actually what, first of all, I'm paying them to do. I want a developer to code, to achieve whatever business problem we're trying to solve. But on the other hand side as well, that's frustrating for the developers themselves because they got hired to develop. And that's a problem. And this is what I want to speak about. This is what I want to really talk about, how we can increase developer efficiency and developer productivity. How did we end up actually here? So, of before, how we're ending up, that leads to frustration, cognitive overload, low productivity, lack of innovation, given the fact that you need to do all those other things as well, which are not really developing in coding. So how did we end up here? So in the early days, the traditional IT operations, you had your development environment, you had your production environment, you had your developers who were focusing on the application, but as soon as the application was done, it was thrown over the fence to the operations team, and then they had to deal with it in production. That overwhelmed the production people, and also the developers were really not satisfied because they didn't get the developer environments they expected to do their job. It was always the developing environment was always lacking actually in terms of either availability or access to it or the same setup as in production. So times developed or times continued, and then we were actually ending up with a model which we call the DevOps model, where Werner Vogels basically said, the CTO of AWS, you build it, you run it. So what it ended up actually is that now you as a developer actually also were responsible to run the application. You were also required to understand the infrastructure. What are the infrastructure requirements my application actually needs? And that was, again, that was overwhelming. That was overwhelming for many developers because they were questioning, why do I need to understand now YAML? Why do I need to understand Kubernetes? I want to code, I want to solve business problems, but I don't want to configure a cluster. That's not in my intent. And also the operation people were not that happy because now it seems that responsibility was taken away from them. And so, okay, what is the future for the operations people? So what I'm suggesting, or what we are seeing already now, and we've seen this is on the trend slide as well, is really the platform approach, the platform engineering approach. And what made the platform engineering approach actually possible was the rise of containers. Again, also not new. Containers are around since 10 years, 15 years in the meanwhile, but now they're also getting the entry into how we are operating in our IT departments. So with platform engineering, with containers, it really allows you this clear separation between development and production, and it's the same environments. There's no difference now anymore between a dev environment and a production environment. And you still give the devs the possibility that they can do what they're good at. They want to develop application, and the platform engineering team really gives them the services, to give them the guardrails on what to use, how to use, and who is responsible in the end. Because what happens with the DevOps model is that many devs went out there, choose any tool they want to use to, in the good intention, to solve the business problem they were asked to solve. But what we've seen very often is, okay, they went to the cloud providers, then the IT department didn't know, okay, with which cloud provider did we have an agreement, who's provisioning what, where, and that was definitely for an enterprise organization a huge problem. And therefore now with the platform approaches, you still have certain boundaries. You're giving them a direction and say, okay, in that setup, you can maneuver from left to right, and there are certain services. And with platform engineering, this is when I'm now coming also to introduce the term of the golden path, because it very often comes actually hand in hand. So the golden path, as it is defined, is really a set of best practices and standardized workflows which are designed to make the developing process more efficient and straightforward. So how you can envision this, it's a paved road, and within that paved road, you have certain tasks, you have certain tools which are allowed, and you don't need to make every decision by yourself. So it's, for the developer, it's easier because it's very well defined. Okay, this is the tooling, these are the workflows I have to follow. And therefore, what it allows you is it automates repetitive tasks. It gives you consistency, also consistency within an organization, and it's really boosts productivity. So instead of that I need to configure again all those environments, okay, this has been pre-configured by your platform engineering team, so devs can really focus on coding and doing what they really want to do. Where does it come from? It comes from Spotify. It's not new. Yes, I talk about that. It seems very new, but actually that's around since 10 years almost. And they did it because Spotify really had very complex and very fragmented development environments. This was just growing over their head. They wanted to have really more automation, more collaboration, and really an iterative improvement. This is how they came up with this approach. There's a very interesting link, blog post actually from the Spotify engineering team. So if you haven't read it yet, check it out. What are the benefits now of a golden path? So first of all, it's really consistency, because the golden path brings you a standardization, and we reduce actually the variability, and we also make sure that team members follow the same best practices which have been proven by their teams already. And if we bring in this consistency, we will definitely then lead to high efficiency, because as automation and streamlined processes will save time. So you're more efficient on doing what you really should do, and that's coding. And in the end, it will increase the quality, because you have standardized processes with automated checks, errors will be found earlier, and you don't have to deal with them in production. Nevertheless, again, where there is a positive side, there needs to be also some negative impacts. And of course, with regulations, with over-standardization, you also actually can inhibit or stifle creativity or innovation. Because, okay, if I tell you as a developer, okay, you only can follow that path, if that's the only tooling you are allowed to use, okay, you're not that creative anymore, because you want to try things out. You want to try a different tool. But this is where the intersection and the interplay between an operations team or a production team and a developing team still needs to be very active. You need to give feedback. You need to provide constant input. Is this now still working, or how can we improve those paths which we have defined? There's always the resistance to change. You know, you have maybe colleagues who always say, okay, we've done it that way the last 5 years, why should I change now? The same thing. Change is the most difficult thing in an organization, and therefore, yeah, this needs to be proactively addressed. Because, okay, if someone is not following that new standard, okay, then it has an impact for the rest of the organization. So we really need to say, yes, we're doing this, let's overcome this hurdle, and let's move in that direction. And last but not least, of course, maintenance. You don't do a golden path once. This is not set in stone. The golden path is a constant evolution, because there are new technologies, there are new services, there are new workflows, and you want to incorporate them, you want to embrace them. You don't want to now stick with the golden path for the next 5 years if there are better tools out there. So let's evaluate those tools and make sure that you bring them in. And this is actually where I believe open source is key, because the open source community is so active, they're so vivid, there are so many new projects actually coming along on a weekly, monthly basis, that you need to be very open. You need to bring them in. You need to bring them into your tool suite if they are suitable for whatever business reason you're solving. And with golden path, I'm also meaning it's not that there's one single golden path in an organization. There can be multiple golden path in an organization, even maybe different from one department to another department. Why open source? I think I don't need to convince and preach you about open source. You wouldn't be here if open source is not core to your own DNA, but it really gives you even more flexibility. Because with open source, okay, you really can tailor your workflows even more specific to the need which you're solving, and which you're solving for your end customers. You have the entire community support. Of course, if you're running into an issue, there's a vast majority of people out there who can help you troubleshooting, who can make sure, okay, how do I fix that problem now? And it's a much more cost-efficient way than if you go with proprietary software solutions. And we're having great examples out there where we see tools like Jenkins for CI/CD, where we see Kubernetes, of course, for container orchestration, where we see Git for version control, And yeah, we see Lagoon also for application delivery. And a combination of all that tooling is really the backbone for robust standard IT environments. And now it's for the third time that I'm saying if there are positive things, you also need to look at okay, what are the challenges. And with open source, there are clearly also challenges. And let me start with the second one, because I think security is the top priority everyone needs to address when they are leveraging open source tooling. You need to have proper checks and balances in place. You need to have security tooling in place to really make sure that you are identifying those CVEs, that you're proactively actually helping to close those CVEs, because a reputation it takes a long time to build a reputation, but very quickly you lose the trust from your customers if you're running into a security concern. Equally important for me in the meanwhile, and I think this is triggered by an event which happened the last 2 years, is actually the license management and the compliance. In the keynote today, earlier, you heard the example from HashiCorp, from Terraform, where they started to change their licensing model, that you were not allowed to use Terraform any longer in any product which you use in production. Now, what is very encouraging is actually how the community fought back. Because immediately after Terraform actually announced that this is now a license change, OpenTofu was forked, and OpenTofu is now used actually as an equivalent to Terraform. But you need to be aware, especially if you're building a product with open source tooling or open source tools, make sure you have someone in your organization who does the license management and the compliance checks. Very often that someone, depending on how big your organization is, you might have an open source program office or some legal advice, but these are usually the people who are checking. They are usually checking, first of all, before we're using an open source project, what type of license is actually underlying, because there are also different shades actually out there. But they can then work with the platform engineering team and actually say, okay, yes, this tool, we don't have any issues as long as there are not any changes. What is also important, when you are selecting your tools for your golden path, also make sure that you understand the history, understand how long that open source project is already existing, how many people are supporting or contributing to that project. Because honestly, you don't want to rely your business success on a single vendor open source project. You really need to vet those projects. The best way you can do this is, okay, you can try them out, but then if they are really important to your business success, make sure you're contributing back. Make sure that you're also adding value to that open source project, because then the adoption gets wider, and therefore the risk that this project gets abandoned is actually much lower than if you're not contributing into that direction. The thing is actually saying with the integration of the compatibility, also make sure to understand what is the roadmap. Let's check in, let's go to those open sessions, open hours with the maintainers to understand what is on the roadmap, what is coming, what integrations do we need. If we may have a certain other tool which we want to have an integration, there are certain ways on how you can make sure that integration gets prioritized. You can fund it by either providing resources, but you also can fund it by donating money so that that integration is built. And last but not least, it's a general challenge within organization who are more or less starting with open source, is that you always again have someone who's okay, why should we use open source? We have another tool which is much better. Yes, it's proprietary, but it serves our use cases. You need to enable them. Come up with programs, come up with open source champions of the month. There are certain ways on how you really can bring also the rest of your organization closer to open source. So I address the challenges, I address the benefits, make sure you understand well which tools you're embedding into your golden path, because if we do this right, the golden path really will increase the developer experience. And I've called out here, again, 5 points why I believe that how this can be done. And the first is really about the streamlined workflows and the reduced cognitive load. So really, if you're providing a set of best practices, these pre-configured tools and the automated workflows, that will reduce a cognitive load of your developer, because they don't need to think about it anymore. They don't need to think about how I'm configuring now this cluster, how I'm writing this YAML file. If this is defined by the platform engineering team, you as a developer can start coding rather than managing any complex infrastructure. Honestly, it will not get less complex in the future. We are now finally really seeing the first successes in multi-hybrid cloud environments. So in the past it was either on-prem or it was in the cloud, but now we see also with the rise of AI that these hybrid clouds will come and will be actually standard for larger, also smaller organizations. So really, if you can reduce that complexity, that would be perfect. Second is higher consistency and better quality. If you have consistency across your team, you have better code quality, which has fewer errors, and then you also have consistency. This consistency allows you to do things faster. So you are actually quicker in onboarding new colleagues, and it's also easier for them to understand what has been done in the past. Faster time to market. What do I mean here? So I believe, and also some papers out there believe that the golden path, and if you're having a golden path set up, or multiple golden paths set up, that this really accelerates your software engineering lifecycle, because it really reduces this time for setup and the configurations. You have automated pipelines, you have pre-built templates, and you have integrated tools. And all this allows, again, a developer to start the project quicker, and you also can deploy much faster. And then again, this allows you to bring your products to the market much quicker, which is good for your business and good for your organization. To increase scalability and easier adaptability, oh, what a word. If environments get complex, also the maintaining and scalability becomes a challenge. And therefore, the golden path again addresses this by providing a scalable, repeatable process that can be adapted when the company grows. So it's really important that whenever you have new tooling which you want to bring into a golden path, that this is not disrupting your current development processes or your current production processes. So therefore, be really careful with that scalable, repeatable process, because it will help you in bringing new tooling too. And last but not least, the improved collaboration. So I spoke about developers, I spoke about developing teams, but if you have a common framework, common languages, then it's very easy actually that you talk to other teams as well. You reduce the risk of miscommunication, you reduce the risk of misunderstanding, and you also facilitate actually the cross-team collaboration, because everybody understands everyone. We are talking about the same thing, we're talking about the same standards. So it's easier if you're, especially working in remote teams or in international teams, if everyone follows the same workflows and processes, it's much easier to solve the problems. So this was an absolutely not technical talk. So I didn't give you any input on how you're implementing this, but this was also not the intention. I really wanted to increase awareness on this standardization and the concept of platform engineering and the implementation of golden path can be a booster for developer experience. I'm around today, tomorrow, if you want to talk more about the Maze.io, if you want to talk about those concepts. Thank you very much for your time, and have a great day. Thank you.